And welcome back to the Blackhouse. We are all, like, me and Mia, I don't know what's going on here, but we got out of bed thinking about the same thing. Like, what is happening? We're both in checks.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually my favourite shirt at the moment.
Well, same here.
Yeah.
Are
you a Taurus?
What?
So, yeah, we're in the house today. We've got Jawahir. How are you, babe?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I've been like stressing out and then de-stressing with crazy reality shows. You know, like Bling Dubai and Bling Los Angeles, and I had to rewatch all of African Famous, and I'm back invested in what's happening to that guy. You know, what's his name? The one from Tanzania. I need to know what happened after Diamond Platinums. Yeah. That cliffhanger was too much for me. I need to know what happened after episode 8.
Yeah, you mentioned that, right?
Yeah. So, and Nani's back.
Yay, hello.
Yeah, how are you?
Hello. The lion, the witch, and the audacity of some bitches,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'll do my best. I can make no promises.
So we're in the house. So we had this really cool conversation like 2 weeks ago about consent and boundaries and what that means to us and how it's different for different people and how it's something that we have to negotiate and navigate
Yes.
every day of our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with everything.
Yes.
You know, not just personal relation, not just your partner or personal relationships with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your significant other, but in every way, shape and form, yeah?
Yeah.
And so I thought might be a good idea if we start off with a story that Jawahir's gonna tell us about consent and where consent was broached, right? Where it was crossed over.
Mm.
So yeah, for me it was in a different area, not in a relationship aspect, but I came here as a refugee, and you know, in the refugee industry, when you knew there is a lot of like images and personal stories taking from you because you are kind of bound to tell your own story for free. And from the beginning, before I came to New Zealand, I was exposed about consent and how to protect your material and like your faith. You don't have to, because I was working with NGOs and I learned that. And today, this is something that I talk about in my Instagram and try to educate refugees and immigrants and talk about consent, and like you don't have to feel that you are brought here, and if you don't do it then you're gonna look like ungrateful. It is your right and you should like say no. So when I came here 1996, I discovered that I was in a book and I was in the book cover, and when you are in the book cover you're clearly the bookseller. And this book, each copy was $50 copy.
So they had a picture of you on the cover of a book.
And also a story inside that I had no idea. I didn't know. I never asked anyone to write anything about me. But the story was supposed to be journal story about refugees, not only in New Zealand but around the world, and what kind of help or treatment or like support that they undergo. And my son was there. I was there. I was pregnant, my third child. My son was born here in New Zealand. He was not a refugee, and I was shocked. And my sister actually bought the book for me. She said that if you are in a book, you are on a book cover. And then I contacted lawyers. Those days, and I think still we have free lawyers in the community law center. So also I got some additional support lawyers and other advisors. So I demand to be recalled from around the nation. And this is one of...
And let me get this straight. So this is a government agency or an NGO?
It was government agency.
So this government agency saw you, heard your story, took a picture, put your story in a book, and then tried to sell it for $50 without even speaking to you about any of this.
Yes.
Wow.
I was
the lion, the witch.
I was interpreter, and I was not directly working for the government, but this specific agency was funded and supported and operated under the government. but I don't think the government told them to do this. But I was called one day, one specific lady, I had a client, and I was told that when you are coming, make sure you come with one of your children. And I just thought the person will take a picture, because she said that she will take a picture, and I thought this picture, they just going to stick, and to show that they work with refugees and things like that.
I've got another question.
Yes.
The profits of this book,
Yeah.
where were the profits going? To the individual who made the book, or was it going to the government agency that they represented?
The agency that they represented. It was never going to...
That's shocking.
Yes. And also was the anniversary of that agency, so they were trying to advertise. But what was like surprising to me, quickly the book escalated around the nation and was distributed, and everyone was top, had a bigger position, and the country had a copy for well done and thank you. I was not invited to the launch of the book. I didn't know, but as I mentioned, I always say, I'm a refugee. I acknowledge that. I'm very proud of that. And I was never been ashamed of refugee, but there was something else about me as well. I came here as someone who already know what is right and what is wrong, what they should do and what they shouldn't do. And I come with my own plans. I came to New Zealand to go to school, to, be somebody, not actually exploit myself or, open myself to exploitation.
Listening to how you're telling the story, it sounds, to me what I'm hearing is there was an opportunist in this agency that didn't actually think of you as,
absolutely,
grown up enough to make decisions for yourself, and so they made decisions for you.
The worst,
yeah. So there's a word for that when they patronize it. Yeah.
The worst of all, I was working for this agency as a permanent staff, and my colleagues.
And you weren't invited to the opening, but your face and your story was selling the book.
Did they even try and contact you, send any emails, hey?
No. The worst of all, as I mentioned, was that my colleagues, the people that I was working with, was actually all contributing and writing stories as well, adding to the book, but they never mentioned to me because I was going to work. I was also allowed to take my children at times, so I was just casually coming to work, meeting everyone, doing 1 or 2, 3 hours work. But nobody ever discussed that. So what happened at the end was that, when I realized, I'm not going to present myself like this in the face of New Zealand. I didn't consent to this, and I'm not going to look like idiot. I know my rights. I demand recollection of the book, not only from Wellington, because the book was published and done in Wellington, from across the nation. What I also contributed was that I myself contacted the publisher, and I told him off that book off your site immediately because it's in dispute. I am in it, and I really don't want that book to be sold anymore, so stop it and remove from your website. And he did it.
Oh wow!
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I told him.
Recalled.
Yeah, immediately.
Wow.
Yeah, within a day he pulled out.
Wow.
And that was also disappointment to the publisher because they expected the book to be there.
Yeah.
But they didn't actually. It was a kind of shock for the whole industry, for a refugee agency. Soon they all start talking and say, well, this is not good, we have to make some changes.
Yeah, well,
changes
you
were
have to
made.
Speak to the people that you include in the books.
Yeah, and
the consensual
it's like
is very
basic.
easily drafted.
yes, and I was successful in terms of getting my demands. My demands were acknowledged, and the book was recalled from around the nation. And I don't think that today's exist. The following year, another edition, another book similar, but which I was not in it, was published.
Oh, so you weren't involved in the second one?
Yes.
Because why? Do you think that's
Yes.
because you spoke out
Of
about
course.
the first one?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when you do speak out and
Yeah.
people don't ask for your
Yes.
consent,
Yes.
we can obviously learn from this that
Yes.
there can be retributions for that.
Not
Yeah.
only that, many of the other stories, similar stories, was also removed from the second one.
Right.
Because those people now gonna come up and say, you know what, I also don't want my picture to be there.
Yeah.
Mm.
So every story that was similar to my stories from another communities were also removed from the second one.
And this is really odd to me, because if you're doing a PhD, which involves talking to people in the community, you have to get permission from every single person in the community that you talk to.
Yes.
So what made this person who's working for a government agency think that they're above doing that?
Because this was early 90s, well, not really 90s, later than that, 1996. And refugees were still fresh. They didn't know their rights. They didn't know their rights, and they didn't, go around and learn things, and they were just seen as opportunities. So refugees and migrants are often seen as untapped opportunities rather than contributors. Yeah. And that is what I talk about my Instagram.
Do you think in 96, because I arrived in Wellington City in 96, I'm not a Wellingtonian, right? So I arrived here and I moved right into Mogadishu Central, which was Newtown. Mm-hmm. So
love Mogadishu, the noise.
Yeah, that was Newtown, right? Yeah. So do you think that there was anything that was really equipped before the groups of migrants that were coming in at that time? Because when we set up the African Children's Playgroup, so that's me and the girls from Newtown, right? Mm-hmm. It just seemed like they weren't ready. Like that, like New Zealand had said, yes, we're gonna accept all these refugees and migrants from all these different countries around the world, but they had nothing in place here. They weren't. They hadn't planned it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 1989 was the first time, the health sector and all, support agencies get together to question how they're going to handle the capacity of refugees in a culturally component way. Before that was nothing about refugees. No. And as I mentioned, if you're not really speaking and if you're not giving that eye contact and you're not questioning things, then you're going to be seen as opportunity, because our culture, we were talking about how we are peer pressure to do things by our parents and our backgrounds, and how we are not, saying, no, I don't want to do that, and having that boundaries. So it's kind of like knowing, if people know where you come from and what kind of practice you do back home, then they're going to also feel that that's what you're also going to do here.
It's also, isn't it a bit harder as well with refugee status, that you're in a country that's not your homeland, and people just tell you what to do and you just have to adhere because you're they're helping me out. It's low-key what is that? It's a type of manipulation. It's something to do with power dynamics and just it's power.
So people often ask me, do you like New Zealand? Do you like to be here? And I say, yes, of course. I love New Zealand. It's the only home that I know. I came here when it was early 20s, and I know more the better politics than I know my country. I navigate the system. I learn my ways, make more friends. I don't know anything about Somalia. I know more things about New Zealand. So yes, I do love. But also, to answer your question, yes, this is also one of the things that I strongly advise people. I talk about this subject in my Instagram, because people feel that you've been brought here, you should be grateful.
Yes, that one. Yes, I was just thinking that.
Yes,
that was one of the things I
would like you to watch my Instagram. Because this is exactly what people feel. I should be grateful. Yeah. By not doing so, then you might be offending people. This is what people feeling. Yeah. Yes.
And I noticed that, and because I don't have a traditional upbringing, and I came from a pretty rough background, and I've been raising myself since, and I've been abandoned as a child, and raising myself, abandoned in the welfare system, and then raising myself since I was 15, and having my dad being deported, and all these things that the state had intervened at some point and did something that really drastically altered my life, right? In traumatic and physical and all these different ways. I've never felt I've been born here, but I never felt that feeling of being grateful, because I'm not grateful for being treated badly. And so I really noticed when people were actually being treated not too good, not too well, but they were still acting like, we've got to be grateful. I'm like, stop acting like you have to be grateful for being treated badly. You don't have to be grateful, but and that to me is that to me is kind of like a boundary.
Yeah.
It's like
absolutely.
it's like somebody's trampling all you don't feel good
Yeah.
about this thing, but we're going to trample all over your boundaries and
Yeah.
tell you that you should be feeling good.
Like,
Yeah.
first off, I'd just like to say I'm really glad that you got the book recalled, but I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. It is hard to feel like you're at home in New Zealand if you're any kind of outsider. I've noticed that, like, not even just within our ethnic demographic or even, like, other diasporas, but even with, like, white kids wearing goth gear, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it can be extremely hard to feel like you belong in New Zealand.
And part of that, the way we give away consent, I think sometimes is wanting to be accepted.
Yes.
So we accept bad treatment,
Right?
so we can be accepted.
Can
So
be
and then
accepted.
it's seen as, oh, well, you gave us consent
Exactly.
to do this to you, and like it's almost like the gaslight thing, because I've been like really good at like trying to dissect this gaslighting and stuff, and like gaslighting can kind of, to me anyway, can kind of be a way that people negotiate consent but then don't feel like they're actually getting what they want out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the thing that always gets to me is I'm like, but what did you actually want? Like, there was a book I mentioned way early back in the day when I first got into the show, and it was called The Four Agreements, and I revisited that, and it has been extremely healing. And one of the agreements is like, you know, you've got to be impeccable with your word. You have to, because that will transform your life. And part of that is being like, what do you want? But what do you want? No, but like, let's.
What do you really
me,
want?
If you and me put exactly what we want on the table, we could just have utopia and work towards it. That's the default, like in all situations. Even if we have to negotiate it, if we're both good faith actors, we can make this happen. But then we have to immediately notice is that if somebody is not, one, very clear with what they want and they're consistent in that word, and then two, they are gaslighting you about what you want, that is the thing for me. It has nothing to do after that. It's up to me to identify that you're not a good faith actor and to disengage. From
Because
the
you
entire
can't control what other people can do. You can only control what you do in those situations.
Right.
And I think being able to recognize when you're in those situations and it's happening.
Yeah.
That might be the trick.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
like I'm always looking for the cheat codes of life. Like, you know, I need to know what the cheat code is.
Right.
Especially if, you know, like if you're in a game and, you know, you want to kill this guy over here, but there's a cheat code to kill him.
Yeah.
To get there and get it done.
Yeah.
I need the cheat codes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I haven't had that instruction. I haven't, you know, people look at you and they think, oh, but you're an older lady now.
Yeah.
You're in your 50s. Oh my God.
You definitely
That's the
had
thing
a
with, like-
completely
And you
normal
should know
childhood.
everything.
Yeah.
So like I think that's the thing as well with like setting boundaries, because you have to set pace. They expect you to set pace when you're like way younger.
Yes.
And so the more you let it happen, even if like you guys were talking about how consent wasn't really a thing when you guys were like growing up, as well as like
Not at
when you were
all,
setting
no.
pace in your life. And now everyone expects you, you act like this and this is what you've been doing all these years. You can't just change on us.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, if you do change, they're like, oh, what happened to you? Oh, you've changed, you've become more disrespectful. And
Right.
because they have a set of like expectations from you, and if you let them cross your boundaries enough times, it's like, why don't you let me cross them again?
Right, like
You know?
there was a phrase that gave me a migraine, like, which was regret is not, you know, the R word, right? And I was just like, you know, this needs unpacking on a deep level. And the reason why is because, like, women who were conditioned into abuse don't even know. They have no concept of those
There's
lines.
actually a condition. It's called battered wife syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you didn't start there from like a traumatic childhood, if you've ever been in those situations, it's impossible to express to somebody I mean, if you ever look at like race dogs or race horses, like the really traumatized shivery ones, that go ahead, tell that dog to draw a strong boundary. It's like,
No, it's skittishes.
Yeah.
Right around to what you said of knowing what you want.
Yes.
And I feel like as well as if it applies to the person who's gaslighting you, but also it applies to you. Like,
Yes.
what do I exactly want?
Exactly.
And like coming back to your story, you said like this, I do not want this, I do
Yes.
not want that, and you stood by it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Good boundaries.
Yeah.
Good boundaries.
Yeah,
But there were people around
Yeah.
you gaslighting you
Yeah.
into not having those boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with the refugee, how, which were dealt with, give
Yeah.
us pictures, stood here, and like, people were just collecting stories upon stories on book after book, and I was like, what are you going to do with this? Where's
Yeah.
this going? And, none of the people were telling us where
Yeah.
material were going, and I was not happy.
That is sketchy as
And-
hell.
I mean, they do that. If you look at it,
And,
they do
the
that all
biggest
time.
consumer of that is
Yeah.
the adult ESOL tutor
Right.
company, the biggest consumer of refugee material
Yeah.
at the ESOL, adult ESOL sector,
Yeah.
and they will not tell you. And all
Yeah.
of this just to, to show the numbers and to say how much they doing,
And there's probably
which is great, not too bad, but still you need to respect people's material.
I mean, if you look at it worldwide,
It's unethical.
you like have kids. You know how it's been, at least these days, it's been very prominent on like, sorry to say, it's TikTok, because
Yes.
it's like social media of my age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TikTok and Instagram, where you have these tourists coming to different countries in Africa and taking pictures of kids
Yes.
and then uploading it online, and you're like, where did you get the consent for this?
Yeah.
And even when they do get consent, you see pressure, like parents are pressured to give
Yeah.
consent to these tourists because you
Yeah.
have like the tour guides being like, just let them take a picture. What's so bad about that? And you
Yeah.
like some families are like
I
not
know.
okay with that because they like maybe they aren't very comfortable with people seeing their living conditions or not very comfortable with like a mass number of unknown people.
But it's
seeing
that
their
whole
kids.
patriarchal sort of patronizing attitude of like, let this person who they perceive as having more power
Yeah.
have the control in this situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without asking the people that are in that situation, in the
Which-
situation themselves.
Which comes back to the thing I was saying, which is like, there are like 3 things that I wanted to talk about when you invited me on yesterday. And thing number 1 was like, we went over that. But thing number 2 was like, the times in which people are going to push your consent boundaries is when they're trying to express authority. Like, the bad faith actors are one of them, and they don't even care. Like, that has nothing to do with it. But, like, there's people who are trying to express, I have the authority in this situation, which is why it's often a male to female dynamic with that pushing. Like, is they're trying to say, no, I am the man here. I have the situation under control. I'm like, I just consent if you knew what you were doing. But sometimes you don't. And I get that dynamic because I am a parent and I do know what it's like to have to be like in a situation where it involves my child and maybe even another adult and be like, no, I don't care what's going on. I'm going to become an authority in this situation. But refugees aren't children.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
They're not stupid.
Yeah.
They have an entire
Yeah,
culture, right?
it's that attitude, and I think that's the global West has to the global South.
Yeah.
That we are like children,
Yes.
and they know what's best for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why you have like at least I've seen when you have like refugees going into like institutions like schools and like secondary schools and stuff, they're treated like kids.
Yeah.
It's like why
It's
are you
like
treating?
owning. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're dehumanizing people just because they are refugees. What's so different about you and them? Like
Yeah.
nothing.
And
at
the
all.
worst of all, none of the refugees are actually speaking up because those refugees that you call the knowledgeables, the one who actually studied and went to uni and understand and actually can read between the lines,
Yeah.
and the puppets. They work
Yeah.
for those agencies.
Yeah.
And they stick there for funding, like signatory, whatever, blah, blah. So, like, people protect their jobs. They're going to get fired. Who's going to pay their mortgages? I don't
Yeah.
have a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
free. I, practice ethical. I'm a counselor. I will not be practicing such a, work. I will be losing my job if I conduct such a matter.
And unfortunately, it's a pattern I've seen repeated over decades
Yeah.
within ethnic communities.
Yeah.
Whether that was Māori, Pacifica, or African,
Yeah.
is that thing of people get to a certain position and then they become the puppets. They're not actually making the changes that are necessary
No.
to improve the lives for everybody in their community
Absolutely
or many
not.
people in their
Absolutely.
community.
Actually,
Because they
they
start
are the
benefiting from
gatekeepers.
yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
become the gatekeepers.
They become the gatekeepers, and
Yeah.
actually they push you away.
Yeah.
They are the one who So it's very, very disappointing.
Yeah.
When you actually observe and see those people who work with refugees and also refugee backgrounds.
And it's
And
sad
they
when
become
you see
puppets.
like people in the community being manipulated.
Yeah, manipulated and
So and the person that's got the position and the power is only
Yeah.
seeing as
Yeah.
far as the front of his nose.
Yeah.
He's not seeing the next 10 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
Which is, if we're going to make significant changes
Yeah.
in New Zealand for African people across the board,
Yeah.
we have to think, what do we want this to be like in 20 years?
Amen. And if there's,
You know what I mean?
that was the other thing I made a note about. I was like, in all these situations, I feel like it's really underrated how much we didn't have this sort of infrastructure, all these expectations of knowing what to do. I'm sure that somewhere along the line, in terms of all these refugee programs and even making that book, there were good intentions. I'm sure of it. And at all points, there were good intentions.
That's what they said.
Right, like there were, but good intentions is not the same thing as not a disaster in the long run, and you have to be able to recalibrate, which is why for me the biggest thing, like as I push forward into my future on personal levels and in my space here in New Zealand, it's like, what do you want? And I find it hard to operate around people who cannot give me like a clear answer. Whether, even if I'm like, I want to help you, but I can't. I cannot, because if you don't know what you want in clear terms and are not consistent with it, I cannot give it to you. I just can't. Even if my heart bleeds for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was maybe even like the biggest problem I had through my teen years, is that people would be like, you know, the good meaning, well-meaning people would be like, well, what do you want? I don't know, like what? Like I had no grounding, no footwork, and no concept of self on that level.
Concept.
No
I mean,
concept, yeah.
I mean, I grew up during the Māori Renaissance, of
Yeah.
course. So this is when te reo was coming back and the kohanga reos were getting set up, and I had this idea that there would be, you know, this is me trying to be like the utopia, right? That there would be a trickle down anti-racism movement that spread its love all the way down to all the different ethnic groups in the country.
Yeah.
And then it sort of like stopped right there. You know, it just stopped there. You know, like we were a bicultural country that recognised two groups, not all the other people that were there. So, you know, like I can look at now the products of having adults that have gone through that within Māoridom or whatever, and the products of their children and their grandchildren that are now in much better positions than they were when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing it translating across other groups as much as that. And the thing is, I think it should be, we should be expecting the same kind of, you know, I don't care if people want to say, oh, just go back to your, listen mate, there's plenty of us being born here.
Yeah.
There is a history that's over 60 years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have the right to have the best, to expect the best for ourselves. It's not just about surviving. It should be about thriving.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right?
that's right.
And it should be about thriving across the board and having those resources and support and everything for everybody in our communities. You know, and I'm talking about the whole black diaspora, not just refugees. I mean, like, I know refugees are a part of it, but, you know, like the rest of us, you know, however you got here.
Yeah.
I think
And the thing is that it hasn't translated across.
Yeah. So, like, so you remember Black Panther, right?
Right.
And not that you'd forget, right? But, like, the bit that struck me like a hammer to the face was when Killmonger was facing off T'Challa. Like, that was massive for me, because I realized how much of the question was, like, to me, I started seeing that, like, it's almost like a smoke, a big mitote, like, that is, like, the question of, you know, European oppression versus, like, the black diaspora. I'm like, actually, like, I really feel like getting clear on our terms of what we want within ourselves is, like, the big monster at the end of the fight for me. And I really saw that play out, because you have the continental Africans and their ideals and what they could be offering us.
And the crazy thing is, I identify with Killmonger.
Yeah, I know.
I don't identify with Black Panther. I identify with Killmonger. You know, like that resentment, you get left in a country all by yourself, you've got to fend for yourself through thick and thin, you've got no support, you've got nobody there for you. Of course you're going to be mad and angry. What do you expect?
Like, what do you expect? Like, no, that was why. It's exactly that. And so I found myself, like, trying to pull away from questions of, like, you know, rather from reinforcing the internal narrative of oppression, which exists. I'm not even gonna, like, nobody's like confused. Like, you can ban critical race theory all you like. Everybody lives it every day.
Yeah.
Right? But, like, we collectively need to start asking what our cards, our tables are on the table. And as you say, stop being grateful for what you didn't want.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't
something that's harming you, don't be grateful for don't look at it and say you've got all these poison apples, you've got a couple of good ones, and you've got to be overly grateful for a couple of good apples.
Yeah.
But the rest of the bucket is poisoned.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
No, I don't agree with it. And this is something I wanted, one of the questions, because, our good friend Octavius.
Oh,
Octavius.
I love him so much.
Yeah, same here.
I haven't met him.
Octavius actually did a lot of this research because I've been going mad crazy doing a whole lot of other things. But I just thought of one of these questions I thought was really interesting that he's asked is, are there cultural differences in our community, or communities I should say,
Yeah.
about what consent is?
Yeah.
There is.
There is.
Who wants to go first?
You know I love to talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it brief. So
Yeah.
I really feel like
Continue.
there's a huge difference between like at least with black people and like even the differences between like Africans, African Americans, Caribbeans. There's a very big difference when it comes to Pakeha and like black people in general. It's like Pakehas have more, I would say, more liege or like more room to have conversations about consent and more room to have boundaries, especially with kids when it comes to their parents.
Yeah.
I've seen like so many videos, when the kid is like, no mom, I'm not doing this, and it's like, if I told that to my mom,
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
no, that would not run.
Like it depends on who's in the room with her.
Yeah, it's like, if we're in public, she's gonna be like, if you do this again, I'm gonna it's a very
like if there's enough people in the room who would look at it, oh sweetie,
and it's coming back at home.
Right, change the dynamics, and then I brought you into this world. I can take you out.
Other students, other European students and whatnot, or other Kiwis, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can't do this ABC, and they're like, oh, just tell your mom, just tell your dad, and you're like, how do you do that? Because you're raised to be like, they're grown ups, they know what they're talking about. Oh,
yeah.
These are people who, power wise, they're above you, as in financially, they're supporting you with everything. They're feeding you, they're clothing you, everything you have is tied to them. So there's no way I can question that because they're doing so much for me.
Yeah.
And then that translates to when you move to different countries,
Yeah.
whereby you're kind of at the mercy of other people because you're like, well, they're doing this much for me, or this, I'm receiving this much, so I can't really complain.
Yeah.
There's a level on which this whole consent and submission culture, the question of consent and submission, and to say, oh no, this person has it, I allow you, is that's what some of us are even looking for. But the whole point is you need to know that person has it. You need to know the other person is in their true space where they actually have got you, and that they're not stealing from you and telling you to submit to that.
Right.
You
know what I mean?
How, again, it's how they've been raised before, because you're saying that you've been raised around mostly Filipino, Japanese people, and they might perceive consent differently.
Yeah.
As in they might be like, oh, this is what a girl child must do. This is what, not inherently saying that that's what it is, but this is how it's perceived, or you always have to do this. I know in my culture, which I find very respectful, there's nothing wrong with this, but it's whenever my uncles would come to the house and I'd have to go get them juice, it's you kind of do a kneeling thing. It's a culture thing. And it shows, and different things like that, even though these are little respect things, but can be translated in other cultures, why do you have to do that?
Right. In those situations, it's not that you didn't like it. When you actually respect the person that you are giving that level of submission to, if you think of somebody as having it so much, I have been in charge of my life and the life of another child. That is hard, right? If I had somebody in my life who just came on and was like, nah, I got you, girl. I got you. I'm like, praise be, we're doing the thing, full submission, full consent, right? I would allow somebody to even make more mistakes if I really felt they had it. And that's what that whole parent-child dynamic is.
Yeah.
But what if your parents don't? What if they don't have it? What if they, the question comes down to, well, what if you got in a situation, as you say, where you found out, you had to find out that your face was on a book from your sister? That's not having it. That's not your situation where they had you. where they were in control, where they made that book with like, you know, all of their ducks in a row. If they had just asked you, it would have been a different story.
I would say no if they did. I would have told them, and actually my lawyer said, you don't know what you're changing. You know, you're actually changing a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot has changed.
Yeah.
And I think like many agencies were like in shock at that time. They were like, okay, we're not going to do this again.
Yeah.
So what they did was, and I haven't stopped there. I also went around Wellington, went to every meeting, every refugee meeting, and stood by myself and I said, you know what, you cannot do this.
Yeah.
So since 2006 to today, I talk about this subject, and it's really dear to my heart. And I know when people are taken advantage of, when people are like taking pictures and writing stories and writing books and selling and not letting people know. I know what's happening to this person because they don't know they've been exploited.
Yeah.
I came from 2 different cultures. So I was married to an Ethiopian.
Yeah.
And I'm from Somalia. I'm Somali born. And there are 2 different cultures. So often when I could remember, like, I'm not married now, but my husband, when we were married, we would have to take water when he's eating. So we'll take a jug of water and, you know, wash. So that's good. Yeah, you must do that, and also like bend your head kind of thing. And also they have this coffee ceremony. So like you have to give with the 2 hands.
Yeah.
And like I remember me growing up also as a Somali young woman. I would never say no to my mom and to my auntie, and if I did, then they will beat me up.
Yeah.
It was my part to say no. You cannot say no to anything.
Yeah.
You could like clean the whole house all day. If they tell you no, don't go to school, don't to go to Arabic class or Quran class, you just sit and sweep in front of the house and just So and there is no boundaries and no consent. Just do what they say. But I think my children's side, their dad was like different, kind of like you have to do in a respectful way.
Yes.
But no, we never also said no. And I know if we say no, then we're gonna initiate some problems. So you have to be careful. Yeah.
No, and I think the thing that I'm also cautious of is that I was not raised a continental African. Like I consider myself diaspora. Like, and I'm consciously aware of like the expectations of somebody who is a continental African that would be placed upon me, and the fact that I'm like, oh no, it never works, sweetheart, I'm sorry. Like I'm like a radical feminist, like I'm like my genetic history is like Black American, you know, radical femmes, and like, you know, Irish diaspora. Like we will go to war and I'll bring the Fae with me. Like you know, like, and I don't have it in me to just fully submit, but there's also been a small shift, which is like just this tiny shift towards like the fact that has nothing to do with my desire not to consent. It's because I don't trust you to actually be responsible with my full submission, and I want to give that because it's actually wonderful. Like I was a mum. And one of the things I realized is as a really big, you know, raw energy kind of person, when I was in that extremely vulnerable place of being a mother, I was so used to always having it, and always being like, you know, the person, like, you know, like the big, like, this is equal playing ground, we'll both pay, you know, all of that like level feminism. And then, but then I was a mom and I was helpless and I was tired and my sister passed away and like just like I crumbled and I needed somebody who
to prop you up,
to that I actually completely trusted to just be like, I'm gonna dissolve into mush and I'm just gonna worry about me and this baby, and I need to know you have everything else. And I need to not have more than that put on me because I need to give my child the strongest fighting chance that they have to be a fantastic adult as they push forward. And that level of submission and consent, it's hard. I think it's even harder for us as Black women to be able to actually trust that like you can't just hand that. And so I realized it wasn't just that I wanted the right to boundaries. I wanted to be able to both like trust to close my doors and also trust to open them. And that was like a huge thing. And I think that was like my experience as well in New Zealand as well. It's like I love New Zealand. I really actually like it here. But I complain because one, because I trust the environment to complain in, which is actually like it's a trust act. And then, but the second thing is that, you know, I want to be here, and I want to be here, and I want to feel like I belong here.
Yeah.
And I think that negotiation does, like, it's like I don't want to have to be antagonistic, and I don't want to have to be the angry black woman. I want to consent, and I want to feel safe. It's so exhausting.
Physically it'll do you in.
It will.
Eventually.
It does.
And that was something that I unfortunately learnt in Australia, and you know, just coming back with the weird and wonderful comorbidities that I have. Which to me is always blowing my mind at the same time. It's like, how can I overcome this? How can I overcome it? But you know, when you're under that stress pump, you know, and people, and just feel like you've got somebody's boot on your neck. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's been like that for a lifetime. It will muck with your health. It will affect your physicality. It will affect your mental. It will affect everything. And then you'll just one day, you know, you may not wake up. Because you can't do it, and your body's just said, nah, we're not doing this today, and we're not going to do this for as long as it takes.
So you hear it, right? Like you're all about like consent and boundaries and protecting yourself. But part of part of consent is just not drawing boundaries against things you don't want, but it's also being able to consent to what you do want. It's being able to say, it's not that I didn't want my face on that book, it's that I wanted to be consulted in advance.
Absolutely.
It's that I wanted to be treated like an adult in that. It's that if you have my face on your book, you can at least invite me to the party for it. You know, like, it's more than just not consenting to, I don't want my face on that book, because it's not what you felt. What you felt is violated in the fact that they should have consented, and that should have just been...
I was like, absolutely, you are right. If they told me, I would have been also supportive.
I'm like proud.
And cooperated, and say maybe, you know, change some of the aspects of the book, maybe like my page or whatever, like, you know, I don't want that story, don't say that, but have the picture, have that, you know, do something. But the fact that they did not tell me made me to, you know, place on them all this demand, because I had the power. There was no any document whatsoever that showed that I actually consented, and they give me that email or the phone call. So I had the right to
had to protect yourself.
The right to pursue whatever I wanted. So I got a very lame apology, which I told them I'm not going to accept it. Keep it, you know, the one that you design and, you know, draft apologies, which is not genuine. So I said, keep that one, you know, don't worry about that. What I need is that you just please recall, burn the unsolved, and shred and put in the rubbish, and, you know, go around the nation, call every library. I used to also call libraries, call everywhere, call the hospital, check every university if they have that book, because I had the number and everything and the author and all this stuff. So it was done. And you're right, you know, if they told me, I would have supported them and told them, okay, or maybe even we can do it together. I can help you.
Or even if they came to you and they're like, oh, we're so sorry, that was an oversight. Would you like to work with us? Like, that would have been the, you'd have felt bad. You would have felt, you would have felt like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I didn't, I meant maybe I overreacted, but like...
And the misconception also, that, you know, people are just, you know, come from low level backgrounds and they're refugees and they don't know their rights, and, you know, we can't do this and then do that, and it's all about, you know, funding and, you know, ticking all those boxes. And you don't want to be part of that, you know, you say, you know, I want to be independent in New Zealand, I want to run my own business. You know, keep that away.
And what
I don't need your help, you know.
And because you're in New Zealand, you should be able to do that, right?
Exactly.
Like, that was, you know, like, I was just going to make an observation. I just thought of it just now about cultural differences in our community. And so, like, you know, when I first came to Wellington and I'm living in the same blocks, the same, you know, housing blocks as a lot of girls from Somalia and Kenya and what have you. And, you know, I was excited, right? I was talking about how is it, because I'd just gotten back from Tanzania. And I heard all the Somali girls speaking in Swahili, and I'm like, that sounds like Swahili, but it's different. And then I'm like, are you Kenyan? And they're like, no, we're Somali. And we start hanging out. And so, like, you know, basically living in each other's houses as you do. And, you know, like, I wanted to go out. But the girls are like, you can't go out. I'm like, what do you mean I can't go out? no, only, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I know.
Like
I
what?
know where you're going. I know where you're going. Yeah.
I'm like, what? No,
Goodness.
I want to go out and dance. Like, I want to go to the nightclub. See, like, for me, dancing was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a dancer
Yeah.
back in my early days, so dancing was a big thing. I loved dancing. And there was this big thing about me not having the consent of the other girls to go out.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't need your consent.
Yeah.
I'm a New Zealand kid. I'm African New Zealander. I can
just
I can do what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was this whole thing about like, now I'm getting everybody out to the club. Like, I'm the one that made. And I'm like, no, they made their own decisions. It wasn't about me.
Yeah.
I had my own choice. I wanted to go out. They decided, well, if she's going out, we're going out.
Well,
But somehow it became all about me.
Well, that's the thing. It's that
Yeah.
gatekeeping thing again.
Yeah.
And like, okay, let me just lay this down. I have had it was part of why that whole Killmonger versus T'Challa thing I said. Because my experience is, as a woman, I have been gatekept by women.
Yeah.
And as a dark-skinned woman, I've been gatekept by dark-skinned women. And like more than anything, I have found my contention in women who want to say, you're like us, you cannot have more than us.
Exactly.
Like, you are like us.
You can't have more than us.
And not only are you like us, you're like us and beneath us. You definitely can't have more than us. And you and any contest to the opposite, I'm like I have had some troubles with something-year-old white men, but like of all the experiences I've had, I've pretty consistently been like barred and gate-kept and kept in line by, as you say, those gatekeepers.
It was like boundaries were being drawn up that I hadn't consented to.
Exactly.
And then when I'm like, these aren't my boundaries. This is
You're
your
drawing
fiction.
your boundaries on
it's
my
your
land.
fiction. Yeah, on my map. This is my map.
It's funny because they don't necessarily like the fact that they're indoors and like they can't go out because of these like pressure that's put on them. So they try to recruit people as well to like
So like,
part of
and
the
I like
society.
hanging out.
Bad.
I love hanging out. Like me and some of the girls are still good friends.
Yeah.
But the thing is that don't put those boundaries on my life. So what happens?
Yeah.
I decide to go out and half of Wellington comes out and it's all my fault.
Of course.
And I'm like, and I still got the pictures at home of us all like having a good boogie, but it was like, it became like a scene.
Yeah.
Because then it was this Tanzanian Kiwi, she's dragged all the Somali women out in the club, and I'm like, I don't even know who half these people are.
Right.
I never met them before. I know that one and that one and that one, and they all decided for themselves.
Like these girls are telling you can't go out, but you throw a party and they're there being like, what is she doing here?
There were pregnant women and their husbands, and everybody's just coming to spy, see who's there.
Yeah.
Like who's there? And this is that whole thing about being culturally monitored,
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I'm not even Somali. I'm Tanzanian.
But that's like the other thing I was
I
saying.
think the challenge was that I think Somali girls is sometimes really difficult for them to go out because of religion and culture.
Yeah.
Because they kind of like, the family want to protect them.
Yes.
They need to wait.
But they wanted to go out.
I was in Courtney Place.
But it was like, what was really funny, what was funny is that they wanted to go out, but they wanted to be able to go, but she made us do it. She made us do it.
Welcome to my life.
And I'm like,
I think it's like easier. So like when it comes to situations like that, I definitely understand the side of the girls. Just to say, because it's like when you like go out and see, I want to go out, but like I'm gonna do it the pretense of like you said that I should go out, so I'm gonna come with you because so it won't be like I'm disrespecting the boundary that was. Oh no, I'm not disrespecting the law that they put on me. Someone else forced me to do it, so it kind of like it's like
the blame on someone else.
Yeah,
you don't want to get in trouble.
Because it alleviates. You don't want to get in trouble, even though it's something that you initially wanted to do, but you don't want to get in trouble for questioning.
This poor Liya, young Liya, fresh to Wellington, being blamed for dragging half of the African community out into the nightclub to dance, and it was all. I did it with my magic. It was all of my magic. And I'm like, I'm not even that powerful, That's
why I wanted to ask you a question. Like sense of what is this? I haven't been in New Zealand for long, but I feel more comfortable setting boundaries in New Zealand.
Yes.
Like I don't want to do this. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. more than I did feel when I was back home.
Yeah.
Right.
As in like, and that's what I was gonna ask you, like Somalia, when you were there and you were also when you were married and you were saying that, I couldn't say, oh no, I want to go to learn the Quran, I want to go and do this, I want to go and do that. You couldn't, because it's like, the society is so different that like, even if you want to set a boundary yourself, like, no, I'm not doing that, you don't have the support to do it. And that's why when you have like girls or like young women here and you're like, oh, I'm going to Courtney Place, they're like, oh, I'm just going to go with you. But it's, like the environment allows me to do that. But if someone comes to confront me, I go back to my teaching. Home, like, oh no, it wasn't me. So,
Absolutely.
And see, that's really different, because when I was in Dar,
yeah.
like me and my brothers and sisters used to go out nearly every night.
Yeah.
And even if, when the mum finished the weekend, she'd come out with us as well. We'd go out as a whole family. And I didn't understand this, I never got that experience.
Exactly.
In that I got a very social, active nightlife, 24 hours, 7 days a week, except probably even Sundays were busy, so there was always something happening in Dar es Salaam.
It differs from family to family though, for sure. Like I would depending on where you're raised and like what the family values, obviously they play a key role. Because my parents were definitely like, you're not going out, because I don't want you to be seen in those places, because you never know who's there, and I don't want anyone potentially going to employ you.
The potential guy who's going to marry the Somali woman is going to be in front of the club. That's the Somali, they want
the guys are always there.
They wanted their daughters to be married, the right guy, and if the right guy is in the front of the club and he sees her, then that family is going to be expelled from the community. It's a taboo, it's bad for Somali women to go to clubbing. However, that said, they do go.
Well,
I think it's more for like a lot. I think this comes again with like the boy child, girl child scenario, whereby a lot of the family's reputation really lies on the girl child. And I don't think that's really being displayed, because you can have a boy child blackout drunk at like some next street there, just like sleeping on the floor. God knows what he drank. And a girl child just being seen at a nightclub, even if it was just to drop off a friend, is already like a black mark on the family.
That's it.
Like
black
girl
mark.
children, we really hold the family's reputation.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're told to be very subservient.
And you don't want
have
to bring shame to your family.
Exactly.
Thank you for that explanation, because I never understood why people wouldn't just say what they wanted. I just did it, but that makes it make sense.